Welcome, everybody. And tonight we discuss President Trump declares pardons null and void. So we suspected that there were many questions that needed to be answered about the last minute presidential pardons by President Biden in his last hours as he vacated the White House. And it went beyond his family, both his brother James Biden and his son Hunter Biden. It also extended to all members of the January 6th committee that reportedly has misplaced and destroyed evidence of their investigation of the January 6th issue at the Capitol building. And they were subpoenaed to turn over this evidence, and all evidence apparently was destroyed or misplaced. And upon the last hours of exiting the White House, apparently President Joe Biden issued pardons to all members. And last night, at the wee hours of the night, President Donald Trump tweeted on Truth Social that all presidential pardons are null and void. And he attributes that to the fact that they were auto signature, which is very common. But clearly, President Donald Trump has information that we don't have, making the case that on many executive orders, as well as presidential pardons that occurred over the last 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency, he was not physically within the White House, or there's some discrepancies because auto signatures are very common when there's a lot of documents that needed to be signed. And so it's customary for auto signatures to be implemented. But apparently President Donald Trump has his team, both he and his team have information that you and I don't have. And apparently there's some problems with those auto signatures that imply that in instances, President Joe Biden was not physically within the White House, which would make those actions criminal because someone is giving his auto signature on documents, federal documents, without his knowledge. And then in other cases, apparently Speaker Mike Johnson approached President Biden about certain executive orders, and President Biden claimed that he had no knowledge of that, or he would have never signed those documents. So apparently, like I said before, President Trump and his team have information that implies that these documents were illegally signed and implemented, which would effectively make them null and void. And this is very good news because as the financial markets go zigzag or continue to decline, the breath of fresh air is that Doge has uncovered $115 billion in savings due to fraud, waste, and abuse. And it's clear that they're going to continue to uncover more. And this is just a scratch on the surface. And my belief is that this money will be a springboard for President Trump's economic policies, because he can redirect money that was already allocated in misguided places to something of substance to implement his economic agenda. And what that will do is buy him time until he can get the House Republicans to agree upon an adequate budget to implement, to turn over to the Senate. At the same time, it buys him the time that he needs, because I believe Doge is just at the beginning. 115 billion is just the beginning of the malfeasance that exists in public allocations of funds. And also we're noticing that a lot of activist judges at the federal district level are trying to block President Trump's team, the Doge team, from cutting this waste and spending and trying to limit his executive powers, which immediately speaks to the question of federal district judges assuming the authority of Supreme Court judges and being equal in power and trying to redefine what the executive powers are. I think this is a losing battle for these judges, but it's a good thing because by them bringing or rendering these outlandish judgments, it sheds light or brings light to and attention to them, and begs the question, are these judges fit to pass good judgment if they're making decisions? Whereas the most recent one ordered the local district judge ordered, and this is Mark Elias's law firm that he's a part of, that they had their security clearance revoked by President Trump. And Mark Elias has been the springboard for taking on pro bono cases against President Trump as well as his administration. So President Trump in kind revoked his law firm's security clearance, and the judge ruled in favor of Mark Elias's law firm, stating Amendment number 1, freedom of speech, which has nothing to do with the fact that they are the ones that presented the fake, false, still Russian dossier case, as amongst other cases that malign President Trump's name. And because of that, they've lost their credibility and are unworthy of holding a federal security clearance or any other clearance, because they've perjured themselves. They've bared numerous false statements. They've taken on and brought on cases against Donald Trump directly as a personal civilian and citizen, as well as the federal government during Trump's different administrations. And Mark Elias's law firm is responsible for going around nationally and filing lawsuits prior to the 2020 election, allowing malfeasance in the voting process. So because of that, Mark Elias's law firm has in many ways committed federal crimes and made actions that deem them unworthy of. They actually should be disbarred. I'm surprised they haven't been disbarred. But wherever these law firms are of Mark Elias's, I would imagine they probably preside in Democratic districts or states where the Democratic leaning policies govern the Bar Association. So, but still, nevertheless, for Mark Elias to bring direct lawsuits against a sitting president, a prior president, he deserves what he gets, and we will see this go further. And I believe this is going to be quickly escalated to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to rule in favor of Donald Trump and let the lower federal district courts know that political activism in these questionable decisions are not justifications for trying to limit the power of the executive branch, because it's the legislative branch duty to create policy, and it's the executive branch, the president, duty to execute those policies in the way that they see fit. And only in extreme cases does the Supreme Court need to be brought in to rule whether the way that the president and the executive office execute those interpretations of the federal legislation is just. And what we're seeing is frivolous lawsuits that are just ridiculous, and decisions being made by local federal district judges that challenge the balance of authority, and clearly sheds light to ask a lot of questions that Congress is going to have to go in and make some reformations of the powers and clarify and make clarity by amending the federal Constitution and making another amendment that's going to clearly make it clear what the powers of federal district judges are, so that these activist judges cannot enact their political policies affecting federal law, and not just in a local district, but nationwide. And so this is, I think they actually have done us a favor because it's going to clarify constitutional law and it's going to lead to some amendments. And I believe that despite the fact that the Democrats, I believe that the Republicans are going to have the numbers because I believe a lot of upcoming lawsuits are going to shed light that the Democrats have participated in a lot of federal tampering with voting practices in at least 20 states nationwide. And I believe that there's going to be a lot of lawsuits that are going to reveal the malfeasance of the Democratic Party at the state level as well as the national level. So with that, I believe in addition to that we should not expect a lot of economic news that is going to sway the crypto markets as well as the financial markets. I expect the financial markets to continue to zigzag throughout the month of March. So with that being said, I think this is a wait and hold type of period for financial investments. The markets are going to zigzag, and I do believe the crypto markets as well as the financial markets will dip lower, and then they're going to dip lower even further, and then we're going to come to some rebounds. But I believe at this point, we are very far from some rebounds and from some dropping in the financial markets. I believe it's just the nature of the beast with all this uncovering of fraud, waste, and abuse. But do not worry. I believe eventually, once we get to the bottom of the fraud, waste, and abuse, like they say, once you hit the bottom, all you can do is go up. So with that, let's be positive, optimistic. I love all of you. God bless you. Let's stay positive. We're on the momentum, big momentum. We're winning. Eventually, once the Trump administration gets through a lot of this fraud, waste, and abuse, they will be able to focus more on how to redirect that money on immediate programs that will stimulate the economy. And let's not forget the most recent investments by AI technology in the state of Texas. But there's going to be further developments and investments announced in the next couple of, I would say in the next 3 to 5 weeks in Pennsylvania and in Michigan. So with that, let's take care. God bless you all. I look forward to seeing you all in the future. I look forward to giving you some good information on some Trump revelations of economic stimulus tomorrow. So with that, remember, the future is crypto.